So now we're going to pick up from furniture. And I want to talk to you about the firm of Maison Giru. That's Girous, if you decide you're going to do a little more research. And you can go to our website and see all of the pieces that we've sold that have been signed by Giru over the years. I was quite thrilled when I found out that Laurie Baker had the same interest in this very luxury Parisian doll shop of the mid-1800s. She collected many pieces of miniature furniture and luxury items that had come from there. So I decided, since we have this kind of furniture, I want to give you a little bit of historical background. So once again, I'm going to do my librarian thing here, and I'm going to push books. Do not abandon books in our life, folks. If you do not have the 2-volume set of the French doll encyclopedia by Francois, you are missing some of the most valuable research you'll ever have, because you'll find articles in there about the Giru company that you will not find anywhere else. So you absolutely must have them. Well, let me tell you a bit about the company. The founder and patriarch was Francois Giru, and he set up business in the early 1800s, beginning of the 1800s, in his basically in his home, where he did paintings on commission for churches. In so doing, he became interested in the framework that would go on those, and that became an integral part of his business later on. But he also became interested in stained glass windows, and stained glass windows brought him to a fascination with optical art. And because of that, guess what he did? He invented the kaleidoscope, one of the most classic, famous toys that has lasted now through several hundred years. He filed a patent for the kaleidoscope in 1818. Well, in 1820, I guess he decided he needed to market some of these things he was inventing, including his kaleidoscope and his paintings. So he changed his studio into a store for luxury novelties and artworks, including luxury toys. Here's an early description of what the store carried, and I'm going to read this to you. It was written at the time. They carried games and other Christmas items, such as fancy goods made of ebony, sandalwood, chestnut, and lemon tree fruit wood, carrying cases of all sorts, all decorated with gold and inlays of sandalwood and ivory. Also leather goods, cardboard items, and the most beautiful screens. Does it seem like what you're looking at now with the camera? Because this is the type of work that he developed from other artisans and in his own studios to offer in his shop. Well, it was always a luxury shop, but he always involved his family in it. He, however, decided in 1826 he became concerned that this business might not stay in the family, and he wanted to bring in the rest of the family members to have partnership in the business. It is interesting that he still maintained his name as the patriarch and owner of the family for the decades to come. But this is what he did in 1926. He changed the bylaws to read this, and I'm quoting, "My sole wish has always been that of preserving the ownership of their hand-worn business for all the children on an equal basis." All the children. Remember that phrase. This is so important because there were 2 sons and 2 daughters. The oldest was Andre. Now, Andre came into the store now and then, but mostly Andre was a very celebrated painter. He had brought his art skills from his father to his own life, and he became known throughout Europe. He won many awards in the famous European salons, and he traveled throughout Europe showing his paintings and living the life of an artist. Next was Alphonse. Now, Alphonse was the one who seemed to be most involved in the store on a day-to-day basis. He continued his father's interest in optical designs. He invented another early animation device, which is absolutely fascinating. It's an optical animation device, and guess what that is? It is the precursor of modern cinema, moving pictures. Fascinating. But he was also deeply involved in the store activity. The third child, a daughter, was Olympe. She was the oldest daughter, and the fourth child was Hermione, and Hermione was not of age at that point. She was still a young girl. Well, here's where it gets interesting. The actual family dynamics remain a mystery, However, he wanted to make sure that his daughters remained involved and had ownership of the company, not just the sons. This was so unusual in that time in France. It was, in fact, usually it would only go to the oldest son, but as we've seen here, the oldest son wasn't involved. So sure, we could understand the two sons had partnership in there, but the daughters, that didn't happen. And he had really put his foot down about this. In fact, the oldest daughter, Olympe, got married. And when she got married, you know what would happen if you got married in France? Everything you owned as a woman, it now became the property of your husband. It wasn't your property anymore. But guess what the father did? The father put this, and he made the son sign a power of attorney to giving his wife power of attorney to engage in all transactions relative to the new company. In other words, although they were married legally, so she didn't own anything, he owned it all. No, she had the power. Fascinating at the time. Don't you want to know what went on behind the scenes? I mean, we don't know, and it was so intriguing to me. Was she then involved in the day-to-day running of the company as time went on? I don't know. One of you has got to do a lot of research on this. There's so much work to be done, and it's so much fun to try to ferret out all of these stories and to look at history at the time and how something could have evolved. We can't look at it with our eyes of today. We've got to look at it in its own context in history and then try to figure out what was different about it. Well, and anyway, the story now goes along, and it really, there's so much. It was every time I get an article about it, I wonder, that's really luxurious. I ponder back and forth. Well, first was it a toy, or then was it just a luxury item, display item? If I wonder about that, it's almost positive it came from Giru. And luckily, many of the pieces do have the original paper label on the bottom. I want to read you about this. In 1983, okay, years passed, they go on and on. All right, he signed the company over to them in 1826. So the decades go on, they're working. And then if you want to know how prosperous the store was, in 1863, this is 1 year before the family was sold to non-family members. During all that time, it was only owned by the family. An article appeared in Le Magazine Poupée, and I'm going to read you a quote from that article. Give honor where honor is due. Whatever your fancy and whims can dream up is available at Giru's. Nobody has made a better application of art to industry than Giru. Its dolls are not just dolls. They are fine ladies, all dressed in supremely elegant clothes. Going inside the showrooms, we found still other marvels, such as trousseau baskets, sewing baskets, pompadour outfits, cases containing the entire contents of a doll's household articles, writing desks, dressers, sideboards, and so on and so on. A year later, the immediate family sold the business through other people's, and it passed through several other people's hands, still winning awards at Paris and Vienna International Expositions until 1984, when it was sold to a carrying case company or manufacturer, and we hear less and less of it. A fascinating study, and if you don't really have a fascination with Giru, consider any of the Paris department stores, or consider any of the other famous Parisian toy stores like Onan Blur, and make your study of the work that they did. This is so much ahead of you, and so much research we can dig up that is wonderful. Well, here's for example of another piece that they've done that we're now looking at. This is an automaton. And the quality of it is very suggestive of something that would have been presented at Maison Giru, because look at the quality craftsmanship of the wooden piano itself. Very, very fine. All of the wonderful inlay woods, a combination of various woods in one piece, the decorative ormolu pieces on it, and the fabulous quality of music that is played by the piece. Not to mention, of course, the beautiful bisque doll standing at the piano. So let's move on and look at other wonderful pieces you'll find. There is a wonderful little girl in a white dress, a miniature one, and that is by the Bébé Mothereau firm, by Mothereau, and they did not make many in this tiny size, so that's just very, very rare to find. We have a wonderful Brew in a burgundy dress standing at the back with a very wide bonnet, a Brew Bébé by Casimir Brew, and she's standing next to another one of the wonderful clocks on the pedestals. Down below them is a very gem of a doll, a little Bebe Schmidt, a very fine one with the early kid body and bisque hands. Very nice, standing next to a chair with her pet dog on the chair. You see how sometimes, I also remember Laura Ackerman, who wrote a wonderful book on dollhouses, and she had this phrase in the book. And she said, you can have a dollhouse and you can have it beautifully furnished, but until you put a doll in the dollhouse, it doesn't seem alive. And the minute you put a doll in there, it interacts with everything. The same thing can be true with your dolls. When they're standing on a shelf by themselves, they're almost like an inanimate object. But the minute you put them in even one little setting like this with a little chair and a dog on the chair, they come alive. They have more realism. They have more punch or more verve to their personality. Well, standing alongside her is a wonderful doll by the Falk Roussel firm of Germany, a company that one of the smaller firms. Dolls have a very distinctive look, and there were only a few years where they made this wonderful particular face, and very, very seldom do they show up. This is a very choice example. Up on the top shelf is a doll by Rêverie Delfieur with a very stunning coral and lace dress on her, and next to her own little partner is another little Rêverie and Delfieur. The other dolls that are so important here are two models by the firm of Casimir Brew. The doll in the aqua coat is the classic face, the one that everyone says, this is the face. That's the signature face of Casimir Brew. Actually, this particular model appeared during the epoch of Henri Chavreau, when he had taken over management of the Brew firm. And it's so classic in every way. It's notable for the little tiny tongue tip that sticks out between the lips and for always having splendid eyes. And it also, by this point, has the Chavreau body, which to many people's minds it is a much more realistic body because it could stand straight, as opposed to the earlier bodies that were all kid and tended to kind of be more in a kind of like almost a crouch position halfway between sitting and standing. And then standing next to her is the Bébé from the Brevet period, the first Bébé by Casimir Brew, his first model. And I know the classic face everyone wants is the one I just described with the tongue tip, but the Brevet face, wow, this is an unbelievably superb face, gentle expression, and this one has perfect body and bisque heads. Down below them is another wonderful automaton. It's a charming little piece, and I'm going to come over here right now and play that for you because I think you deserve to see it go. The Professor and the Dunce. A poor little boy. You couldn't get away with this in schools today, calling a child the dunce and making him sit in a corner and put it on the hat with the donkey ears. But that's what they did. And it's what is charming about this, it has the ears that go back and forth. The little boy is kind of pretending he's listening to him, but let's face it, he's mocking him. And that's what's great. Chameau head and the Professor. Wonderful piece. And standing up above is this very, very precious early Gaultier in original costume, aqua costume, very beautiful. This is the kid body version. And this, again, as I said, so many of the French dolls in here are very desirable because they're from the rare periods of French production. And that is what that one is. And very rare to find that early period in the small size like that with the bisque hands. Right below her is an early period Chameau, again with what I call the splendid eyes. The eyes have that wonderful spiral threading. They have a darker rim on the iris, and then they just like pop is all I can say. They give a splendid drama to the doll. She has a wonderful antique costume with great accessories. Down below her is our third period of Brew. We have all three periods now. We have the classic period, I said. We have the first brevet period. And then we have what is known as the circle dot period. Because only named that mark that way because that's her marking, is a circle and a dot at the back of her head. And why is that circle dot there? You all know, but let me just say in case somebody new is watching. That was to designate where the drill hole was to be for the bébé known as the bébé têteur, because this doll was designed to also be used not only as the classic child doll, but also as the nursing brew, or the little doll that was sold with a bottle and the rubber ball in the head and the turn screw at the back of the head, so it basically became a baby drinking from their bottle. And so they had to have cheeks modeled especially wide, change the model of the face completely. And the circle dot mark at the back of the head designated where the turn screw should be placed. Next to her is a beautiful little doll by Schmidt et Fils, very wonderful with a plump face. There are two faces they make. The pear face up above in the dark green dress is the pear-faced Schmidt, a very oblong, very elongated face, and almost pear-shaped. That's a good way of describing it. It's a very beautiful, large example of the pear-shaped Schmidt. Very, very fine quality bisque. So we have the pear-shaped Schmidt, and down below, in smaller size, her little round-faced sister, a very, very desirable one. Standing behind her, you talk about costumes and dolls that you, like I say, pieces that can come from Maison Giru, and even if they don't have a label on them, I know that's where they come from. There's another shop in Paris of which you can say that, and that is Onan Blur, the very famous Parisian toy shop. They had all of their own sewing shops in the back, in their own little archival rooms, and they would make the costumes for the dolls that they commissioned. This is a very classic dress of the Parisian Onan Blur shop. They worked very, very closely with Steiner during the 1880 period, the Steiner-Burgoyne period, clearly, because many of the dolls that we find that are wearing these classic dresses are the Steiner dolls. And this doll has her entirely original bonnet, dress, parasol, a fabulous, fabulous doll.